Chapter 4 of the Bobbsey Twins and Baby May. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by John Brandon. The Bobbsey Twins and Baby May by Laura Lee Hope. What the Police Found. Dinah's question brought back to the minds of all the Bobbseys, including the smaller pair of twins, the things that had happened in the storm during the night. "That's right!" exclaimed Bert, snapping his fingers. "This baby couldn't have rung our bell. And yet the bell certainly did ring." "I heard it," said Flossie. "So did I," added Freddie. "And we first thought that it was Daddy," remarked Nan. "I think I begin to see what happened," Mr. Bobbsey said. "Bert, you were wrong in thinking the lightning rang the bell." "I guess I was," Bert admitted. "It was the old lady with the green umbrella and the faded shawl who carried the basket with this baby in it." "Oh, Mother!" gasped Nan. "Do you think she had the baby in the basket all the while, in the rain, while she was going past our house in the afternoon? Do you think so?" "I do," answered Mrs. Bobbsey. "And the queer old woman rang our bell," went on Mr. Bobbsey. "She must have seen you children at the window when she passed earlier in the afternoon. She had made up her mind to abandon the baby, that is, leave it on some doorstep, and when she saw children here she must have said to herself that there was a kind mother here." "And there is!" cried Bert, looking lovingly at his mother. "The best in the world." "Thank you, dear," murmured Mrs. Bobbsey softly, as she cuddled Baby May and fed her warm milk. "So," went on Mr. Bobbsey, "when the queer old woman with the green umbrella saw there were children here, she waited until it was dark enough for her to leave the baby in the basket, and then she hurried away. That's what she did. She put the baby on the steps, rang the bell, and ran away. That's the reason I didn't see anyone when I looked through the glass door," remarked Mrs. Bobbsey. "The old lady was gone." "Didn't you see the baby in the basket, either?" asked Flossie, putting her littlest finger softly on the rose-like cheek of Baby May. "No, dear, I didn't see the basket," Mrs. Bobbsey answered. "It was off to one side, sheltered from the rain." "The old lady took good care of the baby, I'll say that, even if she did desert her," resumed Mr. Bobbsey. "After she had rung the bell the first time, she watched, and when she saw that you didn't open the door, she rang it a second time. Then she must have gone away, feeling sure you would come and take the baby in." "But we didn't!" exclaimed Mrs. Bobbsey. "The poor little dear was out in the rain all night." "But she was warmly wrapped up," Mr. Bobbsey said, "and she must have been well fed, for she didn't cry." "If she did, we didn't hear her," his wife remarked. "But I'm glad we found Baby May. Aren't you, Mother?" asked Nan. Mrs. Bobbsey looked at her husband, and the two exchanged strange glances, though they could not help smiling. Mrs. Bobbsey was already bringing up two sets of twins, and perhaps she did not care to start in with a strange new baby. But no woman could help loving sweet Baby May, and the manner in which Mrs. Bobbsey leaned over and kissed the soft cheek showed how tender was her heart. "Is that all the breakfast she's going to have?" asked Freddie, as he saw the infant turn away from the milk. "I want a lot more than that. I'm hungry. I got to go to school." "So have I," echoed Flossie. "My gracious, that's so. I almost forgot. I had to go to the office," exclaimed Mr. Bobbsey. "And all the work I've got to do on account of the flood. Come, children, hurry with your breakfasts, but don't eat too fast, and then skip off to school. Your mother will know what to do with the baby." "You're going to keep her, aren't you, Mother? You're going to keep Baby May, surely!" exclaimed Nan, as she went back to the table. "We'll see about it," Mrs. Bobbsey answered. "Of course we couldn't keep the baby away from her real father and mother." "No, of course not," slowly agreed Nan. "But that old woman wasn't her mother, or she wouldn't have left her on our doorstep, would she?" "I don't believe so," said Mr. Bobbsey. "She was a kidnapper. That's what she was," declared Bert. "Maybe she was a gypsy," suggested Freddie. "No, I hardly think that," said Daddy Bobbsey. "From what you told me of her, I wouldn't say she was a gypsy, and kidnappers don't usually leave the children they take. I don't know just what to think." "We'll have to notify the police," said Mrs. Bobbsey in a whisper, for Baby May is now asleep and had been put to bed in a cradle that Dinah brought down from the attic, the cradle Flossie and Freddie had once cuddled in. "The police? Are you going to have her arrested?" cried Freddie. "Hush! Not so loud. You'll waken her," warned his mother, holding up a finger. "What you going to tell the police for, Daddy?" asked Flossie in a whisper. "Because it is the right thing to do," said Mr. Bobbsey. "This baby may have been stolen by this strange old woman. In that case, Baby May's father and mother will be wild with grief until they get her back. I must find out from the police if there is any alarm over a kidnapped child. I'll do it before I go to the office." "Please do it before we go to school," begged Nan. "I want to tell the girls all about Baby May." Mr. Bobbsey looked at the clock. There was still 20 minutes before the children need start for school, and he could do considerable telephoning in that time. So he called up police headquarters and made a report of the baby being found on his steps. "Have you any alarm of a child having been kidnapped anywhere around here?" asked Mr. Bobbsey. "No," answered the officer at police headquarters, "but if we hear of any, we'll let you know." "Have any of your men seen about the town the strange old woman with a green umbrella and a faded shawl?" asked Mr. Bobbsey, and the twins and Mrs. Bobbsey waited anxiously for the reply. As they could not hear what was said by the police officer, Mr. Bobbsey told them. "He says none of his men reported seeing the old lady," Mr. Bobbsey retailed, "but he'll inquire of the officers at the railroad station. They'll call me up in a few minutes." Mr. Bobbsey put the telephone receiver back on the hook and waited. Soon the bell rang, and when the father of the Bobbsey twins had listened a while, he turned to his family and said: "The old lady came in on the train early yesterday morning. The officer at the station remembers seeing her." "Did she have the basket with the baby in it?" asked Nan. "She had the covered basket, but the policeman didn't see what was in it," answered Mr. Bobbsey. "Do you know anything more about her?" Mrs. Bobbsey wanted to know. "Not much, except that she acted rather strangely," was the reply. "She did not seem to know where she wanted to go, and when the officer asked her if he could help her, she just shook her head and wandered off." "Did she tell her name?" Bert inquired. "The policeman at the railroad station says she mumbled a name something like Washington, but he isn't quite sure about that," Mr. Bobbsey reported. "Then we could call the baby May Washington," mused Nan. "Yes, we could," her mother said. "Is that all the police found out?" she inquired of her husband. "That is all," he said. "They are going to try, however, to find the strange old lady and ask her why she deserted the baby. But we'll have to wait." "And you children will have to go to school!" exclaimed Mrs. Bobbsey, glancing at the clock. "But you'll keep Baby May Washington until we come home, won't you, Mother?" pleaded Nan. "Please do," begged Flossie. "I'll see," murmured Mrs. Bobbsey, as the twins hurried on to school, and Freddie said to Bert, "I'd like her better if she was a boy baby." Chapter 5